management strategies. There are three important parts to the success of every organization, yours included. First, the product and services. Second, the process, the way that you do what you do, the way you make your products, the way you market your services. And thirdly, the one that we're going to talk about the most today, the person, the people involved with you in your business. In this session, we'll discuss 4 important strategies managers can use to receive maximum performance from their people. Here's the first one. This may surprise you, but I tell you, this is the truth. When you speak about human behavior, this is absolutely accurate. Number 1, you and I do what we do to gain pleasure or to avoid pain. Everything that you do in your life, you do because you want to gain pleasure or you want to avoid pain. For example, I love to eat a lot of chocolate. And I travel all over the world, and I buy chocolates from all over the world. And I eat them. Now, I don't eat a little piece. I eat 2 bars, 3, 4, 5, 6. It takes me about 5 or 6 nice chocolate bars to know I am eating chocolate, for example. And I want you to know, and I enjoy that so much. I get a lot of pleasure. Do you know what happens to me after I eat that chocolate? I go from this position of pleasure to this terrible position of pain. I feel guilty and bad, begin to feel like I'm blowing up, I'm getting cholesterol, and I could die at any moment. Do you feel that way? You see, what happens is, I love gaining that pleasure, although it is momentary. It is only for a few moments. And then I sacrifice this long-term pain. Think of somebody who reports to you. Think of somebody who reports to you who is a procrastinator. Why do they procrastinate? Do they procrastinate because they don't know any better? Do they procrastinate because they're lazy? Do they procrastinate because they're afraid of something? Yeah, maybe. They procrastinate because they want to avoid the pain of rejection or the pain of feeling like they failed. And so they go through life day in, day out, month in, month out, for some people even year in, year out, procrastinating. And the manager, you look at this individual and you're astonished why a mature human being would behave in this way. If only you knew that what it would take to change this human being's behavior is to induce a lot of pleasure or to induce a lot of pain. It's simple. You and I and all the people with whom you and I work do what they do to either gain pleasure or to avoid pain. And if you want somebody on your staff to change their behavior, you must ask yourself this question: how can I tell them that by getting the new behavior, they could gain a lot of pleasure? Or, conversely, if they do not change this behavior, they will receive a lot of pain. In 25 years or so, working with thousands of people all over the world, I've come to find out that your behavior and my behavior is dependent on 3 basic stages. I'd like to show you what they are. If you would look at this chart and notice the 3 colors in this triangle, you will notice there is a black block, a yellow block, and a blue block. If the blue one were to represent our behavior, what it is that you and I do every day, then the real question becomes, what leads us to this behavior? You see, if you could find out why do people on your staff behave the way they do, that is to say, what leads them to this behavior, and then if you could affect those 2 stages somehow, wouldn't you agree with me that you could change their behavior? Or better still, that they would want to change their behavior and be happy with it. Here's what happens. We behave the way we do because first we think, secondly we feel, therefore we behave. Please note that what separates our thoughts and our behavior are our feelings. You and I do what we do because of the way we feel. You see, if I feel like I'm going to gain pleasure, I might behave a certain way. If I feel the pain, I might behave in a different way. And if you want somebody who works with you to change his or her behavior, in fact, if you want one of your customers to change their own behavior, ask this question. What must this person feel first so they can behave in the way that I want them to behave? What must they feel first so that they can behave in the way that I want them to behave? That becomes the very foundation upon which you can build relationships with people. What we have said so far is that you and I do everything we do to gain pleasure or to avoid pain. And we have said that your actions, your behavior, comes out of your thoughts and your feelings. And we have said that your feelings, this yellow box, predominantly affects the way that you behave. So now, here's the question I have for you. If that is true, where do you and I get our feelings? Those feelings that we have, what is their source? Where do they come from? Because if you want to change the way I feel, you must first know where I'm coming from. In physics, we say for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. In psychology, we say for every stimulus, there is an equal and opposite response. I do something, you respond to it. I say to you, good morning, how are you? And you say, good morning to you, I'm fine, thank you. Stimulus, response. I do something to you that you don't like. How do you respond? Some people respond likewise. Other people might forgive. What are those feelings dependent on? If I were to pick up this pitcher of water, you can see it has roughly 1/3 to 1/2 filled with water. And if I were to take this pitcher and come to my friend here and unannounced and unexpected, some of you are beginning to enjoy this, huh? You'd like to see me do this. If I were to go over there and I were to pour the contents of this pitcher, all this water, merely on his well-groomed head, his face, his nice suit. And water comes dripping down his face, drips down from his nose, from his earlobe, from his mustache and beard. I have a question for you. How do you think my friend would respond? Let me ask you, if I may. What do you think that he would do if I were to throw that water on his head and his clothing? What do you think he'd do?
Well, he would certainly get upset.
He would get upset.
And then look for a close towel.
And look for a towel? To what? To dry himself?
To dry himself.
And then what? Would he cry then?
No, he would probably go through a thought process.
But what would he do? He dries himself and then what?
Ask why you did it.
Okay, interesting. What do you think he would do?
He might go opposite. In this context, he might laugh.
He might laugh. He might say, ha, 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 I love this. Bring me another pitcher of water. Okay, but he would laugh.
He might laugh it off and...
He might think it's amusing.
Right.
Okay?
Shake some water on you.
Don't give him any ideas. What do you think he would do?
Might get angry.
Ah, he might get angry. How would I know that he's angry?
He'd probably come off his chair.
He would come out of his chair and...
Perhaps go after you.
He would hit me.
Possibly.
I'm a nice guy. You think he would hit me? It's possible, isn't it? It is possible. What do you think he'd do? Take a look at him. What do you think he'd do?
Probably he would get embarrassed
Oh, he would get embarrassed.
and maybe pull away.
He would get embarrassed and pull back?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Turn red and would turn red. Show it in his face.
His face would become red, be embarrassed in front of his colleagues then? Very interesting. 4 of you said different things. What do you think you would do? Now let's think of the scenario. I bring the pitcher of water. I come to you, you're well-groomed, look nice. I pour it on you. Now you're all wet. What do you think instinctively you would do in response to that?
Jump up,
And?
try to get the coat off, try to get dried off. Wonder what I'm going to do if I was out of town to compensate for being wet.
Listen to his answer. His answer has had nothing to do with me. What he has just said is he would be more concerned about what he's going to do now that his clothes are all wet and he's out of town and he has no other clothing. I want you to notice something very interesting, though. The 4 of you, and even you, really now don't know what you would do. You wouldn't wager any money, for example, on what he might do. Even you don't know. Why is that? Here's why. You do not know what he will do, and he's not sure what he would do, because at this moment we are discussing this scenario at the thinking level. This is only a scenario. This is only a possibility. How probable we don't really know. So at this moment we think of it as an idea over there. But if I were to throw the water on him unexpectedly and unannounced, immediately where would he be? Exactly. He would behave. Why? Because immediately he would have certain feelings, and those feelings would automatically cause his behavior. Now, you may be right. He might punch me and hit me because his behavior was affected by his feelings. And then you know what? He might come right back and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, Nito, I didn't mean to do that." He would then think about it. A lot of times you and I do that. We feel, we behave, and then we think about it and we say, if I had to do this thing over again, I would do it differently. Which means, now that I've thought about it, I believe I will go about this problem from a different perspective. Now, the truth of the matter is, when you were a little boy, if your father, when you came home, let's say one day, and you had blood on your cheek, and your father said to you, "What is the matter, son? You have blood on your cheek." And if you were to say, "Well, Dad, at school there was a little kid, he threw me down on the ground, I hit the gravel, and my cheek was cut, and the blood came out." If his dad had said to him, "Let me tell you, son, the world is filled with people like that. The next time somebody does that to you, you grab them up and you hit their head against the wall so they will never again do that to you." If that is the kind of feedback and input that this man has gotten in his life, chances are his behavior would be to hit me. If, on the other hand, his father said to him, "Oh, son, life is filled with people like that. The next time somebody hits you, you simply get up, you dust your clothes off, and you go on your merry way, because you see, son, life is filled with people who will attempt to make your behavior like their behavior. Rise above the crowd. Use your brain. Act in a responsible manner." That's the kind of feedback that you've had in your life. The chances of him hitting me are not good at all. The chances are, like some of you said, he will say, "Why did you do that, Nito? I can't believe you did that to me." He might even get up and quietly leave this room. But hitting me would not be in his consciousness. We said for every action there is a reaction. For every stimulus there is a response. The real question becomes, what causes that response? What creates those feelings within us so we behave in the way that we do? 3 things cause that response. Here they are. First one is called frame of reference. Your frame of reference. The places you've been, the people you've been with, the experiences you've had, all of those come into play as you behave. So for example, your father telling you what to do is in your frame of reference. If your frame of reference is a certain way, you tend to behave that way. Now what that means for you and for me as managers is that sometimes we have the responsibility to change our behavior even though our frame of reference dictates otherwise. As the world about us changes, so must we grow and become better. So first, your frame of reference, your past experiences. Second, your personality traits. Your personality traits. Certain people are very aggressive. They're very temperamental. Others are laid back and quiet and calm, and that affects to a great measure the way that they will behave. And thirdly, our perception, how we perceive circumstances. For example, if he had perceived that the reason I picked up that water and poured it on him was to embarrass him in front of all of you, he might respond one way. On the other hand, if he had perceived that my only purpose, my only motive was to pick up this water and throw it on him only to illustrate a point, even though we would all agree that's not a good illustration, he would forgive me. He would say, oh, Nito, come on, get with it, learn some good things in life, but he would feel no malice towards me. Are we together on that? Our feelings then, our feelings which cause our behavior come from our frame of reference, our personality traits, and our perception of how things are and how they affect us in life. The first management strategy then is that we all do what we do to gain pleasure or to avoid pain. Once we understand that, we can get people to change their behavior by changing their feelings, and we give them new ideas so that they can become better at what they do. There's a second basic strategy that all of us as managers must understand and use effectively with consistency, and that is there is a marked difference between persuasion and information. Somehow, my friends, we have gotten the feeling in this world that all we have to do to give people, to get people to change is to give them more information. If only I can give you more information, you can become better. And the truth is we have information coming at us from all angles, and most people don't know what to do with it. What do you do with all this raw data? Somehow excellent managers have learned to take this body of information and build a bridge slowly and gently to their people to persuade them, to get them to behave in a certain way. I'd like to give you 3 questions. If you answer those 3 questions every time you work with somebody, your persuasion powers will excel. The first one is this: what do I want them to do? What do I want this person to do? If I had my way, what is it that they would do? The second question: how must they feel? How must they feel to do what I want them to do? The third question: what must they know so they can feel this way, so they can behave in the way I want them to behave? We're right back to think, feel, behave. The truth is, a lot of us try to communicate with others without first, in very clear terms, saying to ourselves, what is it I want this human being to do? Specifically and clearly, what do I want them to do? And then how must they feel to do that? And what must they know first so they can feel this way, so they can do that? Here's an example. You go to a doctor. Let's say you have a sore throat and you go to a doctor. And you sit in the waiting room for the doctor for a long time, although you're a very busy and important person. And finally, the nurse comes in and calls you into the doctor's office, and you go down this well-lit corridor to an examination room. And the nurse says the doctor will be here momentarily. Momentarily means you could wait another 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And tell me something, is that room ever over 20 degrees? I mean, you sort of come in with a cold and you walk out with pneumonia, don't you? And so now 20 minutes outside, 20 minutes inside, finally the doctor comes in and says, "What's the matter?" And you say, "My throat hurts." And the doctor writes a little prescription so you can take it to a pharmacist, a chemist, a drugstore, where you can buy the medicine. And you could never read what the doctor wrote, right? You cannot read what he wrote. They just never learned how to write properly. The truth is they know exactly how to write. You know what that prescription says? That's a secret message from the doctor to the druggist. And you know what it says? "I got my money, now you get your money." Now the doctor spends about 2 or 3 minutes with you, and then the doctor leaves. And as the doctor is leaving, you look at the doctor, and what do you say? "Thank you. Thank you for having me wait 20 minutes outside and 20 minutes inside. Thank you for taking my money." Isn't that crazy? Shouldn't the doctor be thanking us? Aren't we the customers? Why do we thank the doctor? Because there is a very powerful principle at work. And the principle is that when I went to that doctor, I was very persuaded that that doctor is going to take my pain away. And remember what I said at the top of this program? You and I will do more to avoid pain. And when the doctor takes my pain away, give him my money, give him my time, I'll wait whatever amount of time it takes. We must learn to communicate effectively with our people so that they can be persuaded that the ideas that we give them will work for them in their life and will help them to achieve the things that they want to achieve in their life. The third principle is that managers today must know the difference between excuses and objections. When you ask someone to do something for you, maybe it's a project to be done, maybe you invite their ideas and participation. Many managers do not know the difference between an objection and an excuse. Only 4 things happen when you ask someone to do something. They either say yes, or they ask you a question, or they give you an excuse, or they give you an objection. If they say yes, that's wonderful. If they ask you a question, you can deal with that. If they give you an excuse, you're in trouble, unless you know how to turn that excuse into an objection. Excuses might be things like, "I want to think about it. I want to talk to somebody about it. Let me look into it." In today's world, what do these questions mean? No results come out of statements like that. What we must do is see if the person is giving us a real objection. An objection, you can do something with it. You can provide them more information. You can help them set a strategy. You can show them how they can solve that problem. You can help them manage the journey. An excuse is a waste of your time. And the fourth management strategy that we must all understand, we must know the difference between solutions and agreements. You know, as a manager, you have a lot of power. And if I were reporting to you, I would be cognizant of the fact that you are my boss. And oftentimes we bring committees together or individuals together, and we solve a problem, but the solution does not bring together teamwork. The solution is not subscribed to by everybody in the group. So you have people leaving the meeting and saying, "Well, we'll do it that way, but that's not really the way I think we should do it." And somehow the performance of the individual becomes lesser and not as significant, not as productive, because they don't buy into the solution. So while solutions are important in technical areas, in behavioral issues, we need to work hard to bring agreements among people so that the fingers on one hand can work together to make things really work. My friends, you and I are living in a world that is moving and changing. You and I have opportunities like we never thought possible. You and I, as managers, can make things happen. We can help our organizations, we can help our people, and we, in the process, can help ourselves. We also must know that yesterday's ideas cannot be used today to solve today's problems. And today's ideas may not be sufficient to meet the challenges of tomorrow. And the smart manager is he or she who understands the basic principles that make for success in management today. Some of these strategies, as I've shared with you today, are simple to understand, useful in our lives, and can be enormously effective. So know that people do what they do to either gain pleasure or avoid pain. Understand that there is a major difference between persuasion and information, between excuses and objections, between solutions and agreements. And when you know those differences, and when you put them to work on a daily basis in your life, in your business, with your group, then you, my friend, you are moving onwards and upwards with excellence.